Hello everyone, I'm Shiv Mathur again. I thought I will talk about telepathy today. This is an interesting topic which I thought I will take up because it's got some metaphysical aspect also, and it also has a scientific aspect. There are a lot of studies, a lot of experiments which have been conducted on telepathy, but there is no clear cut proof. Proof means nobody knows the secret behind telepathy, how it works. So when people conduct experiments, a lot of times they don't work. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. People have, in the urge to prove it, people have done some wrong, unethical means, and sometimes they admitted it that they used unethical means to prove that it works. So somehow the issue is that they're not been able to prove it. Now, before I explain what is telepathy, though everybody knows it, I will just give a background that I did some research on telepathy. That is there any substantive proof available? Has somebody tried to really prove it scientifically, understand it, or it remains at a very discussion level only, not being agreed rationally by the scientific community. Now, science is the essence of our existence, and it's very important to understand the scientific basis for everything, because there are two kind of people. One is who think scientifically, and the others don't think scientifically. Others don't think scientifically because they are not from the science background, and even if they are from science background, probably they are not so deeply into the science understanding of the science behind the creation. So the problem is the scientific community doesn't think spiritually, but there is a scientific community who does think spiritually. They do explore spiritually, but somehow they have not been able to explore everything, and they have made a lot of progress in science. You can't just run it down that the modern science is not capable, but they've been able to send rockets, spacecrafts. So science is advanced to a large stage. We talk emotionally a lot about Ayurveda, but all these great people who claim Ayurveda or even Patanjali, when something happens to them, they go to the hospitals, for their own treatment. If you look at Acharya Balkrishna of Patanjali, he was admitted in AIIMS when he had a heart problem. Another great big name, Ram Bhadracharya, he also said Ram will cure it, but when there was a problem, he also went to for the modern medicine. So Ayurveda also had surgery, they say, but probably we have lost the knowledge behind it, and even if we have lost it, so it's no point in feeling so great about it till the time you really don't get that knowledge so that you can really cure people. So I think the whole approach of people today, whether they are approaching through modern medicine or through Ayurvedic or even homeopathy, the expectation in Ayurvedic and homeopathy is not much. Mostly people go to Ayurveda or homeopathy only if there is nothing very, very grave, nothing very serious. When something is really serious, they go to modern medicine. But there have been cases where people have cured their even cancer. So the whole thing is the premise of the body, functioning of body has to be understood by the individual. And nobody is a bigger doctor than you yourself. The way you can understand your body, if you really understand it rationally, and if you really understand its science, if you listen to your body, then only you will understand how to cure it. And you need to know what your body needs. If you don't understand what your body needs, and if you expose your body, you push your body into a kind of a system driven by the social narratives and the external things, and you think that the body If you don't listen to the body, you don't understand the body, then there will be problems. So the need of the body has to be understood, how the body is supposed to exist on this planet. If that is not understood, the whole causes behind every disease will not be understood. Like literally every disease is actually coming out of mind. And then there are viral infections, but even the viral infections are happening because of the changes we have made in the nature. We have played around with the nature, so we have become more exposed. If you look at dogs, the pet dogs, there are pet hospitals, but there was a time for the animals, for the wild animals, there are no hospitals, and they go through the self-healing process, the natural process of healing if they get injured. But I don't think you come across wild animals having cancer or what. They live the life. They don't try to prevent it. And I will also make a video on death and long life, the fear of death and long life, because it's very important to understand the death as an event and the fear of death and the longevity which we feel that it's good to live long life. Why it is good to live long life? How much life should we live, and should we be even thinking about how long should we live? So we will talk about that also in another video. I'll talk about that. So coming back to telepathy, I was giving some aspect of the perspectives we have with each kind of medicine, and how deep we have gone into understanding this as a science, and what are the drawbacks we have, where do we lack. That's another aspect. Why are we unable to go deep dive into these different aspects of human existence? So now I'll come back to telepathy. Telepathy has been there into our life, in our life, because we do go through these experiences. Everybody goes. I think a lot of people must have, maybe most of the people must have. Sometimes we don't realize, and sometimes we are very aware. So it is all about awareness. I have myself gone through many telepathic experiences, but we have a tendency to ignore it, so we don't remember. We don't note down that I had a telepathic experience. Even if we note down, we don't think deeply about it. Why did this happen? We just feel excited about it. Oh, I was remembering you and you called me, or I was remembering you text me. So we just don't think beyond this. Why did this happen? But recently it happened repeatedly with me, and then I started thinking about it, that why is this happening? Because there was a constant it was a pattern, like, there was a pattern in why it was happening. So when there was a pattern, like, I also had manifestations, so both are similar. So we'll try to understand the rational reason behind it, which probably I could analyze it, and I may be right. So you may agree or disagree with me. So what I realize, that anything, first I will talk about the transmission and reception part in telepathy, how the thoughts get conveyed and how does the person respond. So let's talk about that. Then I will talk about why it happens and why it doesn't happen. Telepathy doesn't work every time. Why it doesn't work, I will talk about that. So there are two things. So first thing is, let's understand the science behind the thoughts. So I'm not going back to how the thoughts are generated in the brain, how they are processed. That's a different science, which I have written a book, and I have a couple of videos on meditation. Probably you can see that the thoughts are triggered through the sensory organs. Through the sensory organs, we are getting all the inputs to the brain. All the signals are coming. So they are all the signals are electrical signals. So they have a field, electromagnetic field. And when they are processed in the brain based on the conditioning, we have gone through the patterns and the programming. So if suppose we have certain human qualities, the nature, the trait, like we have a tendency to be jealous, that's our nature. So we have got conditioned like that. So based on the conditioning, the brain processes all the inputs coming to it, and when the input is processed, the output is thought. The first thing is output is a thought. A thought can be a desire, emotion. We use the word emotion, but thought is like a mix of different emotion. So there are different thoughts, and there is a sum total of thought which have been constantly created. If a person is constantly thinking, and if a person is constantly feeding the brain from its memory or through the sensory organs, it is continuously generating thoughts. Now the thought can be a desire also, where there's no second person involved in that probably. So telepathy will work if we want to tell something to someone. If there is a second person involved, like I want to eat food, there's nobody else involved in it. So this transmission will not go anywhere, because it is not required to be transmitted, but there has to be action done by you. So different thoughts are different categories. So that category of thought which needs to be communicated will only come under telepathy. Okay, because every thought will have another action around it. So some action will be there. So if now coming to those thoughts which need to be communicated, so there is something which somebody else has to be done, and you want to communicate. So how can this be communicated? Telepathically. So this telepathically communication, this is where we'll try to understand the signal. Now, why some thought will get communicated, some may not get communicated telepathically. So signal, when it is generated, it's a signal. A thought is a signal which needs to be communicated. Now, if you look at the communication science, how we transmitted signal, whether it is in telecom, whether it is in entertainment industry, radio, right? We listen to radio. So how the radios have these FM and AM. So there is a frequency modulation done and an amplitude modulation done. So when I'm in a radio station, I'm speaking something, or I'm playing a song, but it cannot be transmitted. To transmit it, we modulate, we superimpose the actual signal, which is a song or whatever we're talking, on a carrier wave. So carrier wave has a capability to get transmitted to a longer distance. Now, depending upon different kind of modulation, the distance differs. For amplitude modulation, it can go to a larger distance, but the quality is not good. But in frequency modulation, you can transmit to shorter distance, but it's a lot depending on the line of sight, but the quality is much better than a AM wave. So we have these technologies which we did develop, and if you see in any communication, what is happening is, even if you are superimposing it, you are also coding and encoding. So there is an encryption, decryption, encoding, decoding. So at the transmitter end, you are doing some processing so that you can transmit the signal. You are superimposing on a carrier wave. At the reception end, it is again demodulated. So there is a modulation, demodulation. So there is a processing happening so that the signal can be transmitted. So we also develop these protocols and concepts of communication. So if you come to a thought which needs to be communicated, and there has to be a proper signal and a proper carrier also. Now, if coming to a telepathy process, the signal which needs to be communicated the signal should be pure, which needs to be communicated. But if that signal gets interfered, then that signal will not reach. And the signal which is pure will not get interfered by some external signals that will get communicated. Now I will explain this, why some signal remains pure, doesn't get interfered, and why some signal gets interfered. So now this is a catch, you need to understand this. If I have something which needs to be communicated, and that is pure, the intention is pure. If the intention is pure, there is no other signal which will interfere with this signal, and this signal will also the intention is pure, and the requirement is very genuine. So there is a great intensity created. The amplitude of the signal and the requirement, the truthfulness, genuinity of this, purity of this requirement creates an amplitude, intensity for the signal to get communicated. There is no blockade. Nothing will block this. But if there is a communication which we feel we want to do through telepathy, but it is not pure, the intention is not good, the requirement is not genuine, then what will happen? Along with that, there will be some more thoughts of doubt which we are not aware will also get created, because I am not sure about this requirement. So there can be many situations. I am not going to talk about those situations now. There can be many situations where we want something to happen from someone, we want someone to do something, but we are not very sure about it. You will feel that you want that to happen, but you are not, from inside you are not sure whether that requirement is really genuine or not. You are not sure whether that's correct or also not. So when that conflict comes, when there is a subtle conflict, subconscious conflict, then those thoughts will cancel that requirement, interfere, overlap, superimpose, and destroy that signal. So that signal will never get transmitted only. If you have understood this, you will understand when will telepathy happen, when telepathy will not happen. But because the output of brain, which is a thought, which needs to be communicated, is a signal. It is electric signal. And there is definitely these signals are getting transmitted. Now how they are getting transmitted? Are they getting carried through a carrier wave, or they are self-transmittable? This I really can't say. But this particular communication, it happens in which band, which frequency, what kind of modulation, how do they get the wavelength, that this is not measurable. So we have no instrument probably to measure that. So we cannot even tap something which is Wi-Fi. We can only tap something which is going through a solid medium. Like we can tap a communication signal if we can tap physically a device. We can connect to a device and we know there is no security inbuilt. We can probably tap. But here in Wi-Fi, in a wireless, in a kind of vacuum medium, we don't have that technology to tap into a signal, nor we have a technology to measure the different audios going in the open space. So because of that, we cannot right now find out the whole method, But logically, if you see, this sounds very correct, that why we are unable to prove that every communication can reach telepathically and cannot reach telepathically. So what I noticed, this is my own observation, that wherever I have felt there was a genuine need, I'm not giving the example here. I can give the example here. If somebody wants, I can give the example here. But right now I'm not giving it, because this pattern which happened in the last 8 months, and when I did an analysis, that's why something is not happening. But why something is happening, then I kind of got this answer, that there was an element of doubt in those requirements, and there were conflicts in those requirements, some conflicts, subconscious conflicts about the genuineness of those requirement. But here it was very, very naturally happening. These telepathy communications happened very naturally, without any expectation of them being telepathic, because they were genuine. And every day, every moment, you are not communicating. You are not communicating just every 24 hours. Those communications, those requirements come not very often, not very, very often. So these cases of communication are very, very not there. I won't say rare, but they are not very frequent. And these genuine requirements are also not very, they are kind of rare. So when that situation, when all those conditions are fulfilled, in that scenario, a telepathy communication will happen. And today, if I try to prove it, I cannot prove it because I have to create a requirement. When I create a requirement, 99% will not be genuine just to prove it. So I'm not supposed to prove it. But when you do an observation, if you do analysis, when these things happen, you should be aware and catch them. It's not that to prove it to even myself, I will try to experiment it. Because when you try to experiment, you are trying to create a thought to communicate with someone. But if there is no genuineness in that, then that will not happen. But when there is a genuine urge to connect with somebody, like when you're thinking, there's not even a requirement. You're thinking about someone with whom you have not kept in touch for last 6 months, and then when you feel a concern that how is that person, genuine concern, whether there's a genuine pure connect with that person, then a message comes. But if you just want to connect with someone for the sake of connecting for no genuine concern, then it will not happen. So this is definitely a point worth noting. Think about it, that telepathy does work. It does work in certain conditions. So there are conditions when it works, when it will not work. So you can't force it to work. It's just for yourself to understand. It is not for others to. It's not for proving someone. This is not a siddhi. This is very, very scientific, and this is the core basic human science of communication which happens. So think how much of your desires of connecting with someone are really genuine, how much you are concerned about somebody, how much are you really genuinely concerned about someone, how much are you genuinely connected to somebody, how much of empathy you have, how much care you have, how much compassion you have, how much love you have with people you know, and how much empathy or caring somebody needs. So people are in different situations whom you know, and how much empathy you have, how much care you have, how much love you have towards those people. So it all depends upon those situations and different human qualities which are acting. So the purity, if there is a purity, then only that will happen. So this is what I want to tell, and I hope you understand my point of view about telepathy. And I've seen many videos on telepathy, and I found a lot of people, they're just telling it works. They have not been able to give any rational reason, because instances will happen and you can say why it is happening, but if you don't understand why it is happening, then you don't know when it will happen, when it will not happen. So it's also important to know how it happens, so that when it happens, when it can happen and when it will not happen. Once you know that, then life is very easy, because ultimately you have to understand the essence of life, understand the humanity, understand the human values. And when we become pure, everything is happening naturally. It's happening very scientifically, and everything happens. Then we call manifestation. Everything happens. And what is not to happen will not happen, and you can't make it happen, because we have to follow the law of the universe, the law of the nature. God has created a science for our existence. When we break it, things don't work. Now I want to clear two more things when I'm trying to explain the purity of genuineness of connection, where there should be love, empathy, caring, compassion. I'm not talking about anything to do with any kind of relationship. There is a requirement that somebody needs to do something, and that's a genuine requirement. So you want to communicate, like you are on a job, and there is a genuine need for something to be communicated, and somebody has, probably you're not sure that person has executed or not, and you're thinking about it. So probably this thought will get communicated to that person. Now this third thing, which is also very important, which I missed out, I need to tell, that the communication can happen one way or two way both. the thought may go there, and that the response may not come. So the thought has gone because there was a genuine need for the thought to be transmitted, because there was a genuine requirement. And most of the things where the communication is needed because somebody is supposed to take some action. Now this can be different scenario. It can be professional, personal, with some relative, with some friends, like some friend of yours has not called. Like today, one of my friend, he called me after probably a year, maybe after a year, and I was surprised that how did he call me. So like he probably remembered me and he called me. So here it is not telepathy. I'm just saying that sometimes you are not, and sometimes you're thinking, like I was thinking of another friend of mine who called me 3 months before, I think, and then I was remembering him for the last 10 days, and I was thinking I need to give him a call, but I was looking at the right time, and suddenly he called me. So this is also telepathy, because there was a pure need to communicate and pure remembrance that this guy has called me twice and I haven't called him back, and then he called me again. So this he's my naval course mate, and then today the guy who called me also a naval course mate. Probably they both got connected and they discussed me, and then this guy calls me after a year. So these are somewhere telepathy. So there can be an example like this, and can be an example where something has to be done. You are expecting somebody to do something. My example which I was quoting is basically somebody is translating my book in French, and that's a genuine need. And I was concerned whether this book person is doing it, progressing it, why not progressing it, why there's a delay, that person serious, not serious. So whenever I was concerned, immediately I used to get a message. And the last one was really, really so strong that I was worried, and I get a message, Shiv, don't be worried. The book is almost done. There's 10 more pages or 20 more pages left. So the message was, please don't be worried. And I was worried. So that person could probably read my message that I'm worried, and then I get a reply like that. So I was a little shocked, an update is different. I'm getting a message with an update, that's different, but also adding to that message was that don't be worried, which was like that person could read my thought that I'm worried. And immediately within few hours I used to get that message. So during this translation of the book, in the last 8 months, this is what happened every probably 1.5 months or 2 months. It's happened 4-5 times. So this is the latest example, and there are many more examples which we ignore. Now the third part which I want to tell is also very important. You can't just communicate with just anyone. Also probably there are two kind of people whom you like to communicate. It cannot be just random. So you don't communicate with somebody whom you just don't know. I don't know whether that can happen, because you have to see that person first, maybe a photograph, and probably then you can communicate, because then you have seen the person. So probably there is a possibility that there is some connection which is established by seeing even the visual. Now I'll say why somebody will respond, somebody may not respond also, because somebody doesn't want to respond knowingly after receiving your message, knowing that you are concerned, but that person doesn't want to execute that. So there is a conflict on the other side. Because of that conflict, that person doesn't want to update, doesn't want to respond, doesn't want to execute. So that's not happening due to a conflict on the other side. The thought is gone, but that person is having blockages. So there is a blockage over there. There is a conflict. That person wants to communicate, but there is a conflicting thoughts coming there. That person is in a conflict, so there is no purity over on the other side for that to respond. So here there was a purity, it went, but there was a impurity over there. So that the second communication, the two-way communication did not happen. So for the two-way communication to happen, there has to be a synchronicity. There has to be a connection between those two people without any blockage. and there has to be a genuineness of understanding, mutual understanding between those two people for a two-way communication to happen. So sometimes the telepathy will happen one way, but the other response may not come due to some blockage. It can be anything, like, like person doesn't want to reveal something, somebody is in problem, not having some, doesn't want to reveal that, and somewhere you are expecting probably some, maybe you are expecting something, maybe some help, and that person doesn't want to. So why this communication will also happen, that if you look into the normal communication, the communication happens if the receivers and transmitters are tuned into the same frequency. If they are not, the receiver will receive only what it is tuned to, and transmitter will transmit only what it is tuned to transmit. But the more important is the receiver. The receiver has to be tuned to that frequency to receive it. So if there is a tuning, if there is a mutual tuning, which will also happen if there are no conflicts. Conflicts mean there are no conflicting thoughts. So there are pure thoughts, then this tuning is there. If it is not there, this communication will not happen, two-way communication. And we are connected to many people with whom we can telepathically communicate, but only if we are tuned, only if there is a we call it, we have these emotional terms, bonding or good connection, we have good friendship, good relationship, whatever it is, whether it is in professional, like mutual understanding which we develop, we call it understanding. There are no barriers between two people. If I am working in a company, if there is a barrier, if I am not genuine in my relationship with my peers, with my subordinates, then that understanding is missing. So then also those things, if there is an understanding, if there is a genuine connection between your team as a leader, so this communication will also flow. This will flow there also, because then the whole connection is based on love. Like there's a purity of relationship between your people with whom you're working. So it can be anyone in the world whom you know, what kind of relationship you have, professional, personal, friend, whatever it is. But if there is a genuine connection, genuine understanding, and there are no conflicts, then the communication will happen telepathically. I hope you get my point. Thank you. There are 2-3 more points which keep coming in my mind. When I made this video, I thought I missed out this, so I thought I will add this also before I really upload this video, and I consider it to be complete. When we want to communicate, there's one case where the people are far away, then telepathy, we realize that telepathy works sometimes, and I explained why telepathy works. Now the second case is when somebody is in front of you nearby, where you can say by using audio. So when that audio happens, so a thought has been generated which needs to be communicated to somebody who's near you, and you can speak actually. So now here in this case, what is happening is, whether the need is genuine or not genuine, this thought is getting converted into a action where you need to speak and convey that what you thought. Now here the problem comes. When you think and when you speak, so there is a science which is happening. You're using audio, and humans have over a period of time developed a protocol which we call language, a code basically we have developed. So there are so many languages in this world. So we have got this ability to develop a language. We don't know what is the origin of language, who developed the language, but you imagine that we did develop a language, and how we thought of developing a language. We imagined that if we say apple and we use that word apple, and then we created a script, we created alphabets, We use the alphabet to create a word, and that word got associated with some physical object, and that's how we created a language. A language got developed. There is a script, and there is a meaning which got associated, and basically that's a pattern we developed using codes, and that became a language. And then we started created sounds around that. We, for each word, we created sound. So we created a language, we created a script, we created an audio for that, and that used to communicate between two people who got taught this script and the audio, or whichever language. So language got created by even humans only. So we created a mode of communication which we use for even coding and modulating and coding, encrypting and all. So this is also encryption, decryption which we created. We this is a program. So we created this program in our mind by learning it, and then we use this to code and encode, decode. So that's how we started using audio, a speech, to communicate something. But the problem is, what is a gap here is, when we created this speech, it has got a limitation by words. All words cannot convey completely. So because of speech and text, there is something called interpretation. So we created something called interpretation. So what you wanted to convey using this language, could you really convey what you thought? And what you conveyed, could that be correctly interpreted? So the speech has a limitation. So when now come to body language or a telepathy happening there itself, so there is a very great understanding between two people, and there is purity. So coming back to purity, so whether you are far away or you are there itself, telepathy can work only if there is a purity. And if there is no purity between two person, wherever it's either one way or other, with both or one of them, then the telepathy will not work irrespective of the distance. Then you have created this audio language which has a limitation. So now telling you something very important, that silent communication is said to be the best way of communication. Why silent communication? What is happening in silent communication? It's just a telepathy. So when telepathy worked, when you had no blockages of impurity, impure human qualities, like you don't trust, you have doubts. So there are conflicts, like negative quality means there are conflicts. So there are thoughts of conflicts which are not letting the pure communication happen. And when there is a pure communication, there is a silent communication, the whole body reacts to the thought, and that can be read. So we talk about body language reading, we talk of mind reading. It's nothing like, how can you read a animal? When you have a pet, you can understand what the pet wants. So the pet is already communicating with you because you have developed a great understanding with the pet. So you are able to understand what the pet wants, and the pet is also able to understand what are you thinking. When you go to a forest, and when you don't have a fear and you encounter a animal, wild animal, so the animal will sense fear. So when you have a thought of fear, that animal will sense. And if you don't have a thought of fear because you are having purity, so there is no fear, you are thoughtless. So animal is also not concerned because there is no concern coming from your side. So when there is no mutual concern, the animal will go their way. So the thought with purity will not create any blockade and create perfect harmony. And this is how the actual communication is happening telepathically, not through these things which humans have created, which have limitations. So telepathy is actually happening naturally and always. But we have created blocks, we have created blockages, blockages are coming out of the impurities in the human qualities we have. And that's why we don't really even understand how the humans were supposed to communicate. And if you really look into it and look into animals, I made a video about learning from animals. animals are communicating. We are also communicating with animals. We have not created any script. We have not created any language because we don't know how to teach the animal. We do train the dogs. We have some way of training the dogs, and there is different levels to the dogs who have been trained. So there is some even audio used to even communicate to the dogs. So we can develop patterns even in, because dogs and horses are intelligent animals. So they can be we can always develop, but we have not been able to do those kind of experiments because we don't make all animals pet. So if we make some animals pet, then there is something called training. So we try to train them, but what we are doing is we are actually influencing the human impurities which we have imposed on ourselves, and we think that is the way to communicate, and we have forgotten the beautiful, the pure, natural way of communication. If we understand our responsibilities, we don't have to talk. Why do we need a manager in the company? If everybody works, you don't need a manager. If everybody understands what they need to do, where is the need of the whole protocol? Everybody should do their own job and quietly go home. There's no need of talking. If in the house everybody understands their responsibility, things will happen automatically, naturally. Nobody has to say anything. And that beauty of silent communication, the telepathy, which we are actually designed to, is actually not happening. Okay.